everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name's Jeff Simon. I'm president of SocialFlight. I really appreciate you taking time out of your evening to join us here for SocialFlight Live. Now, tonight we have two very fascinating guests that'll be joining us. Really excited to be able to join us with Mark Hansen and Jolie Lucas. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. Just want to give you another reminder. SocialFlight Live evolved, of course, because of the crisis that we have going on with COVID-19 in our world, and us trying to find a way that we can help general aviation, both by communicating with yourselves as well as being able to provide assistance in every way possible, and pull from our network that we have and the friends and people that I have met along the years that are so expert in so many areas of general aviation and contribute so much to our world. And so the goal is to help you, and I would encourage you to send us information, send us what you'd like to see, send us your questions so that we can help address it with the larger community, and that will help us craft what guests come on in future episodes. Now, a couple of quick notes. First of all, there will be a recording of tonight's presentation, as there is with all SocialFlight Live presentations, and that is available later on through our YouTube channel. Just search for SocialFlight, one word, SocialFlight on YouTube, and you'll be able to find that as well as so many other videos that we've made all about general aviation, products, everything that you can imagine in that area, and some great information about something. We're going to have a treat at the end of our show with a little bit of a tour having to do with this airplane behind me over here, which is our T-51 Mustang Build. And so lots and lots of cool things to do with that. In addition, here, you can submit questions. That's available within the webinar app that we're using to provide you here at SocialFlight Live. Put your question in. We will do our best to get you that information get your questions answered during the actual broadcast. And if not, we'll follow up with you later on. Sometimes there's things that we have to actually do that with. So a couple of quick things. And also the screen, when you see a broadcast as a technical note, you have the ability of sizing the windows for your video. And so you will see myself as well as my guests, and you have the ability to drag those windows and make them larger or smaller if you're having any issues in seeing that. So enough housekeeping, let's get to our presentation tonight. So I'd like to talk a little bit, I'm going to flip the screen here, about flying during the crisis. And that's really our theme. And I wanted to just show you, we are within the limits of safety, and that's very important to talk about, very, very much in favor of making sure that people stay current, stay active, and are able to be ready for when the crisis is over or when they're called upon to be able to help the communities around them. And that'll be one of the topics that we talk with our guests tonight. And I'd just like to share with you a flight that happened yesterday. We were able to do a currency flight that the boys and I did. Again, safe social distancing observed. We had no contact with any other individuals and just went up to Plum Island in Newburyport, Massachusetts to practice short field takeoffs and landings, get some currency in, etc. And I just want to share some of the pictures that you can see here of that flight. It really was spectacular and also healing to some degree. If you have not had an opportunity to fly during the crisis, and you do, I would encourage it for one other reason, and that is we found it remarkable that once we climbed out, we were talking to ATC and just having this peaceful flight at twilight, that the world is the same from the air. It really is. We see so much of these issues on the ground, even if you take a walk around your neighborhood. And yet when you get airborne, it is remarkable the sense of peace that just all of a sudden comes over, and it really gives you a moment's break from everything that we are all dealing with, whether it be the news or challenges at work or challenges in our community or economic concerns. It really was fascinating. And I will tell you that the controllers that we talked to along the way, their tone, the way they were approaching things was remarkable in the fact that they seemed so happy to have us there. It was not busy, of course. It was fairly quiet. There weren't a lot of pilots there. And there was this relaxed camaraderie on the radio that was heartwarming and healing to some degree. And so the pictures that you can see here that we got really tell a little bit of the tale of how beautiful it was just to have this interesting evening. And we'll keep sharing more of these through Instagram, YouTube, and other things that we do. But I think that's important. And I do want to note, for everything that we talk about during our broadcast and our support of flying during the crisis, that nothing is as important, of course, as safety. And that means safe social distancing, not sharing headsets, staying away from anything that would put you or others in harm's way. And of course, also checking the NOTAMs, making sure that there are not any areas where ATC is not currently staffed. And of course, whatever the laws and recommendations in your local communities are, because that changes regularly, and that can also affect whether or not it is safe, legal, and advisable for you to be flying. Now, I will say, when I called Flight Watch and talked to them about planning this flight, I had a discussion with the woman who was on the other end of the line about flight restrictions, and I really wanted to understand, had they seen any flight restrictions having to do with the crisis? Were there any information not recommending general aviation flying? And she said she had not come across anything like that. Occasionally you will find a closure of some kind due to lack of staffing, but I think it's very important to pass that along, that was my experience. And again, just like the controllers that we found while airborne, she was extremely happy to have had the call. Everyone wants to keep moving forward. They want the calls, they want to do their jobs. No one wants to be sitting there while nothing's happening. And so I think it's helpful for everyone, and we'll talk to our guests about that as well. Moving forward, I'd like to talk to you about that's connected to a program that we've been running that's been very successful and really taking off, which is our Takeoffs for Takeout program. Very important in terms of being able to save our airport restaurants by helping support them. And even if you cannot fly, that means looking at whether at your restaurant saying, can I purchase a gift certificate for future use? Helping support the FBOs, pilot shops, and other businesses at these airports. Again, whether it's by booking some work that you know you're going to have to do, helping get the supplies you're going to need for your annual inspection, or again, just getting out there if you can, flying and having some patronage to the restaurants. So I definitely encourage you to participate in that. And the restaurant that I'd like to feature tonight is from Norwood. Actually, this came on the recommendation and a connection from Mark Hansen. When Mark communicated with some folks, I got a call from a lovely young woman that is over at Tasso's Euro Cafe in Norwood saying, please tell people we're open. We have practices in place so that we can accept payment over the phone. We can leave takeout right outside. No one has to have contact with another individual, and we're using safe practices in the preparation and delivery of that food as well. And so very, very important thing here, but man, all you have to do is look at those pictures and it gives you a sense that there's some joy that you can have by participating and checking in with that as well. So I'd like to get to our first guest this evening. Our first guest is Mark Hansen. Mark's from in Plymouth, and I'm going to show you this picture, and let me bring Mark online here. Let's get him started. There we go. Now, Mark is a serial entrepreneur who started his first company right out of grad school, and I won't put the date on there because I don't want to. I don't want to date anybody that's involved in general aviation there in terms of what their age is. And Mark is really the quintessential self-made individual that's focused on consumer electronics companies and helping them overlook segments of their business that had to do with product repairs and returns. And was able to, use that ingenuity and that dedication to create a life for himself that he's able to give back. And like so many people in aviation, he's dedicated himself to giving back to organizations such as Be the Match that we'll talk to, the PALS program, which is Patient Airlift Services, Veterans Airlift Command, Above the Clouds, and was honored by the Celtics with a Heroes Among Us recognition award as well. So welcome, Mark. How are you doing?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me.
Now, we can see, I'm going to stop sharing the application so everybody can see us here more directly. But this will make it easier just to see the pictures of us on the screen. But you fly, first of all, let's get to one of the most important things. So you actually fly an Eclipse jet, is that correct?
I do. I've been flying it for about 8 years now. So.
And so again, accomplished pilot, 2,000 flight hours and 900 hours in your Eclipse?
Yes. I really got into flying during the 2008-2009 slowdown in the industry, and my wife said I was actually flying more than I had been working prior to that. I did about 1,000 hours in the first three years.
Yes.
Yeah, so I definitely was flying too much, and then I came back down to the ground, got in touch with reality again, sort of went back to work and tried to find that life balance between flying and working.
So one of the things that really I'd like to talk about this evening with you has to do with how general aviation pilots can contribute to so much of the urgent need during this crisis. Now, I know one thing that you're doing is helping with the Be the Match program, and that Be the Match, as I understand it, is for matching for bone marrow.
Yeah, Be the Match manages the ecosystem. You can register your DNA with them. They'll then take and match it to people that have a need. So physicians around the country, actually around the world, will post their need and they'll match the DNA to the tests that they have in their registry. They'll then arrange for the harvesting of the bone marrow. They'll then typically put it in a cooler with a courier, fly commercially, take it to the transplant center, and then it's given to a person who either has leukemia or some other blood disease. So that's obviously a challenging situation right now with the airlines.
Now you said that, so that's how this was previously done, was a lot of airline use with couriers, et cetera, and now there's a void, and that's what you're working to fill right now using general aviation. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the test flight should be Thursday, and tentatively from Chicago to Lebanon, New Hampshire. So I'll do the test flight. We'll document it. We already have the SOP written, so we'll see how it goes. No human contact at all. It's just cargo. Courier will bring it to the airport. We'll do safe distancing, wipe down, put the box in the airplane, get it to the destination, repeat the same process.
Right. And I think that's an important point because so many of these programs, including the ones that you've been a part of in the past, of Patient Airlift Services, Veterans Airlift Command, et cetera, are really not safe to conduct at this point. They're really only for first responders in emergency situations to come in contact with individuals with any illness. And of course, those individuals in particular are generally very vulnerable. They may be immunocompromised, and it's got to be awfully tough on them that all of these services are generally shut down.
It is, and it was a tough decision to make. There was a doctor that works for California DART, which is a disaster relief program, that wrote us all a white paper, and it was fairly telling. Basically, the masks aren't that secure. Those people aren't wearing them correctly. There's air still shared in the environment, especially in a small plane, and he really advised against transporting anyone. And after that white paper came out, we all started shutting down.
Yeah, and even in, as you mentioned, even in an environment when we were talking, you were saying the only thing that's safe is the type of masks that are in jets for decompression that seal around you. But even in that case, from our last broadcast when we talked about disinfecting an aircraft, even in the case where you can control something like a mask, you need to understand that the virus can be living on the outside of the mask, on the outside of your clothes. The risks involved even in taking all of that off safely and protecting yourself are very high.
Yeah, it's just not worth the number of variables you can't control. So,
right.
So
But
that's why it's,
I think the flip side, of course, is that there is an opportunity to be delivering supplies and things
yes.
like what Be the Match is doing with bone marrow match samples.
Yeah, in Colorado, Angel Lake West has been transporting blood for a while now. So they had a good cargo process that we were able to leverage. And then they've been asked to transport masks, and other people have been transporting masks. And there was actually one report of transporting a single ventilator to a rural hospital in Colorado. So General Aviation is just, finding its way into the process right now.
Mm-hmm.
The Be the Match was the first one that sort of came along to us that was something we could actually do. So we'll see how this one goes, and then we'll try to work on ramping up. They still do have volunteers flying commercially, which I think is pretty brave of them to be doing, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it makes sense to avoid that if you're dealing with people. But I think there is an opportunity when it comes to the logistics side of transporting supplies and equipment during the crisis. And of course, this can be General Aviation reaches direct into every community. And I think there's an opportunity, of course, there. So what do you recommend for individuals who would like to safely use their aircraft and their flight skills to help during the crisis? Can you tell us?
Yeah, and I'm sorry. If you're not already signed up with one of the volunteer pilot organizations, you should go to the Air Care Alliance. And in the Air Care Alliance, there's a list of almost all of the volunteer pilot organizations in the US. And you can find one that's local to you and then go through the vetting process. The pilot onboarding process varies different, vastly among these organizations, but they all pretty much require you to prove your credentials and your currency. Once you're vetted, you're then typically given access to a missions list. And that missions list is specific to the organization. In this case, through Air Care Alliance and Angel Flight West, for Be the Match, we're spinning up a national missions piece of technology. So if you're a pilot on one of these organizations that will be participating, you'll have access to that national list. And the missions show you from and to mileage, things that give you enough information to decide whether you want to do the flight.
Yeah, so Air Care Alliance, a great place to start. Obviously, there are going to be grassroots opportunities as well. The FAA as a whole, even when you look at what they consider their rules for commercial operations of private pilots, has exemptions for these types of things. And so even in a grassroots level, if there's a need to be able to transport supplies, I think that's something that everyone can find a way to help contribute with. And by doing that, again, we continue to support the other parts of General Aviation as well.
Yes. It's a good thing to do all around. Doesn't matter whether it's a time like this or not. Gives you an excuse to fly and stay current. You go to interesting new airports, you meet a lot of very interesting people, and it becomes a very, compelling thing to do. It's almost addictive. Once you get into that giving back mode, it's the smiles, the rewards, the thank yous. They do suck you in. So
giving back is addictive.
It is. So
without a doubt. Now, I'd like to call attention. You mentioned about currency, and that's a very important thing because I think it's important that pilots try, again, within safe practices, to maintain their currency, because we are a stopgap. We're a fallback for so many forms of transportation to bring relief. And we do not know where the crisis is going to go. And when the crisis, even when it ends, there's going to be a need to get back into currency to be able to safely fly. And I think it's really important to be able to do that. I had a discussion with AOPA today, and although there's talks going on, there is no relaxation of the rules having to do with currency at the moment from the FAA, and it's unclear whether they intend on relaxing any of those rules. And so that brings up an interesting situation. because if you look at, for example, IFR currency really gives you have two options, three if you consider simulators. You have the ability to deal with approved simulators in order to maintain your currency, but most of that is not happening because they're associated with flight schools and instructors, and therefore in most cases are shut down. You have the ability to go out and go with a safety pilot and simulate IFR and get your approaches done, which in most cases is not available unless your safety pilot happens to already be in your social circle at home. If you happen to be married to another pilot, certified for the same level of aircraft and everything else, then yeah, maybe you're in the minority that can get away with that. But aside from that, you don't have that as an option. That leaves one option left to maintain your currency, and that is flying, and actually flying in IMC conditions if you want to maintain your IMC currency. Now, again, I'm not trying to be the end-all expert on that, but the regs basically state that you can do your IFR operations in the clouds, and as long as some portion of the final approach is in the clouds, you can then get credit for that approach. And that's very important, because if anyone has already not been flying long enough that they have any types of concerns about that, then you can decide for yourself if you feel comfortable with en route operations in IMC, but not comfortable with maybe low approach types of operations. And you can make whatever decision is appropriate to you and your safety on your minimums list. But you could theoretically go out on a day with 3,000-foot ceilings or more from where you're living and still get credit for that currency, for that IMC, and have a pretty good safety buffer below you.
Yeah, and a lot of the VPOs, volunteer pilot organizations, have minimums as well. So we have 10 hours in the last 90 days. And
okay.
you have to be IFR current.
So and even more important that people try to maintain that currency.
Right, and then I mean some of the other organizations allow VFR pilots and have less of a currency, but they're out west where the weather's better. If you're flying in the Northeast, if you don't have your IFR rating and then you're doing these kind of missions, it can be kind of hard.
Yeah, of course.
So.
Of course.
And Thursday looks like an IMC day, at least for part of the day. So.
And we're finally getting out of the point here in the Northeast where IMC equals icing, which matters certainly to those of us that don't have a couple jet cans behind us like you do.
Yeah, but we also get icing all year round, in the altitude. So
right, depending on the altitude, of course.
you get kind of used to it. So yeah, currency is definitely an issue. I've been making myself fly every Saturday or Sunday just to get a routine going. Yeah. And if the weather's good, fine. If the weather's not good, fine. I just have to go do it and try to do 3 approaches in each time. And
yep.
It's working so far.
Excellent.
So we'll see if I can sustain that. But it will help if I can do this flight Thursday. That will help with currency as well, and also be a kickoff for the cargo program.
So I'd like to, but before I let you go, I'd like to call attention to one other thing, which is something that I'd like to thank you for and give you credit for, and hope that we can inspire some other people out there as well. And that is the work that you are doing with your local airport restaurant to help keep them going, but to support them as well as also the first responders in the area that are just working so hard to save people during this crisis. And that is that you have taken local airport, Plain Jane's in Plymouth, that restaurant, which is just a wonderful place. And my understanding, and correct me on the details, is that you have basically opened it up for med flight, state police, other first responder workers there, that they are able to go to that restaurant, and you're covering it?
Yeah, so we thought of this a couple of weeks ago when it was clear that the restaurant was getting stressed, and I just thought of an easy way to start giving back and wanted to see if it would work. So I just gave them a credit card and said, the town, the airport manager, Tom Mayer, helped out and said, yeah, let's try med flight. we contacted MedFlight and they said, wow, no one's ever offered us this. That's really great. And now they can go there for lunch and breakfast, and any crew that's working. The state police haven't taken us up on it yet, but we did contact them. The Plymouth town manager contacted us and heard we were trying to do something as well. And she said, hey, we've got these 70 drivers doing Meals on Wheels, and they're not getting any recognition. They have no personal protection equipment. And I said, perfect, good profile. So we delivered our first 25 lunches to them today, and they'll be delivering now, not every day, but Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we'll continue that through April and May, however long this goes on. And then we're going to start, same thing at Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital. You know, the doctors and nurses are getting lots of love from the community, but everyone's forgetting the maintenance staff and the housekeeping staff and the rest of the people that have to also be in the front lines with extended hours. So we're going to deliver soups to each shift 2 or 3 times a week, and we're setting up the logistics to do that. They had to get approval to have outside food come into the facility. But again, we want to say thank you in some at least consistent way. And This is a way to help Plain James as well.
And that's the key, is that it's helping both, right? You're helping the first responders, and you're also, of course, helping keep the restaurant open, those employees going. And so I'd just like to throw that out to everyone watching. You know, it's not everyone, of course, is in a position where they can give back financially. Some people are obviously on the other end of that. But if you happen to be in a situation where that's a possibility for you, or you know someone who would like to give back and doesn't know quite how and has the means to do something like that, I would just like to spread that word as part of Takeoffs for Takeout, that this is an idea. This is really an interesting concept that you can, for whatever amount, maybe that gift card that you've thought about isn't for you. Maybe the idea of that donation in a gift card that would go towards a restaurant is to help a first responder or someone flying a mission in and out of that airport, to help them do their job and help say thanks to them and support the restaurant at the same time. So yeah, just something to consider.
It can be any combination, yeah, $20, $30. And I want to give a shout out. There's 2 other guys that have come in to help now, George Turner and Jason Wilson, and they're going to be also helping with the funding of future programs. So,
excellent. So again, Mark Hansen, thank you so much for joining us on SocialFlight Live. Really appreciate everything that you are doing. We'll look up into those blue skies and hopefully see that Eclipse jet taking off. And one of these days, I want to come down there and get a ride.
No problem. I like co-pilots. That's good. Thanks again.
Excellent. Build my turbine time. So thank you so much. And now we will move on to our next guest on the program. I would like to, let me do the little switch here, and I would like to welcome Jolie Lucas. Now, hi Jolie, how are you?
Hi everybody, doing good.
Now, let me find your slides here. If you give me just a moment, I will share that. So Jolie is an aviation writer, educator, psychotherapist, and GA advocate, and one hell of a Mooney pilot and supporter. How are you doing, Jolie?
Got to throw in our love for Mooney in there.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Can't avoid anything like that. That's incredibly important. And so I was thrilled when you were available to join us this evening, because I love everything that you do supporting General Aviation, especially with this focus on care of pilots, and not just how we can give back, but how we can take care of ourselves. And I think that's so important as part of it. And that's why I really wanted to give everyone this kind of opportunity to have a little bit of some of the education that I've gotten directly from you, having to do with supporting yourself through this crisis.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I think it's something that's very critical right now for those of us in the pilot population, but also everybody else. I'm sorry. People are blowing up my phone and I don't know how to make it go away, but Teresa from Lightspeed, shout out.
So if anyone's blowing up Jolie's phone, you can put your questions through the Q&A
yeah,
here
that's right. Sorry
on
about
SocialFlight
that.
Live instead of sending it direct.
So right now,
before we get started with your presentation, tell us a little bit about what you have been doing recently and your own flying in your own world during the crisis.
yes, well, you know, we're in sort of unprecedented times. And as an instrument rated pilot, and I'm working on my commercial right now, it's been a challenge because I want to be able to fly the plane, get myself up in that third dimension, utilize our local FBOs for fuel, our restaurants that are nearby, particularly San Luis Obispo, Oceano, Santa Maria, California. Those are sort of my home area. So what I've been trying to do is get up and exercise that plane, working on my commercial maneuvers. So people are probably going, what does that Mooney keep turning around? So anyway, just trying to get out and fly.
A lot of chandelles and lazy eights, basically.
Yeah, chandelles for sure, and doing the 180-degree power off landings. So shout out to my instructor, Captain Mike Jesh, who's probably watching as well. We haven't been able to work in the airplane, of course, due to social distancing. But for me and my mental health, it's good to get up and use our GA system, use the airplane, use the FBOs and the restaurants.
Right. And so, of course, implied in that, for anyone who missed it, is you are going for your commercial certificate now.
Yes, I am. It was great to get my instrument rating. By far, I think that is one of the harder things I've ever done in my life, is get that rating. But it has made me a better pilot. I had about 15 years of flying before I got my instrument rating. So I decided that after I got the instrument rating, I would go on to get my commercial rating, probably move on to CFI. My idea is to be an ambassador for General Aviation, and I love to support airports, to inspire people to become pilots. We need more girl pilots, and so that is something that I'm very interested in doing. So working on the commercial, got a little hung up with the pandemic that's going on, but we're all going to come out of it on the other side. Right now, we're in the messy middle.
Exactly. And of course, you know, Jolie, you and I have worked together many times in a variety of different situations, yes. And I always enjoy the opportunity to collaborate with you on different things. Now, so what one thing that I would, before we get into, you know, your particular presentation, you know, you had a rough situation at one point with your Mooney when you can you tell us a little bit about what because everyone is learning to deal with crisis, to move past things, and to find even more meaning in their life through that. Is there something you can tell us about what happened with you and the Mooney?
Sure. It was 2003. I was in Hood River, Oregon, which is where I learned to fly in the Columbia River Gorge. My father had flown his Mooney, Maggie 1, up to Hood River for our fly-in. And so we had an annual airport day like many places do. I played in the band the night before. And we were taking my daughter, Candace, and her boyfriend to Eugene, Oregon. Go Ducks. And so it was airport day. There were people giving scenic flights, just busy airport, lots of folks on the ground. And I was flying left seat, and Dad in the right, and the kids in the back seat. And so it was a pretty cool day. It was about 60, 62, 63 degrees. And it was a 45-minute Mooney flight to Eugene. I gave it the throttle and started to take off. And not having very many hours in the Mooney, it felt a little off to me, like it didn't have as much get up and go. But it came to rotate speed, and I rotated, and it just felt really off. And so we lumbered into the air. There were trees at the end of the runway, a restaurant down there, and it became really clear to me that we were not going to fly for very long. So I did what I was trained to do and banked a tiny bit to miss a big fir tree. And then when it was clear that the train was rising toward Mount Defiance, we were going about 55 miles an hour. And I made the decision to tell the children to brace for impact, that we're going to land in the treetops. I cut the engine and pitched into a landing flare. We started, I'm getting chills. We started impacting trees about 50 miles an hour or so. The eyewitness said that the last tree that we hit, it looked like we were just suspended in midair. And so what happened was, hit that last tree. Both my dad and I hit the glare shield, and we fell backwards into the canopy of the trees, ended up upside down in a mud pond, and the 7 trees that we hit landed on us. So that was about 11 a.m. I remember transmitting. We were upside down. I learned to be careful when you take off your seat belts when you're upside down, because I landed right on my face. I was transmitting to my instructor, Dave Cable, who was behind us. And, the antenna was in a mud pond, but in my brain it was, I gotta try to get help. We all exited the airplane. I was really, really upset, understandably, I suppose, because my child's in the plane, my dad flopped out, onto the wing. And that night we were grilling steaks at 7 p.m. and I was crying, and I felt like I had taken my dad's airplane from him. I felt it was something that I did or did not do that caused the crash. And he looked at me and he said, "There are no funerals being planned today. Wow. Metal can be replaced." So within a few months, I bought Maggie 2, and I had the N number transferred from my dad's airplane to my airplane, and I've had that plane for 17 years now.
Wow. And I just want to say, for so much that you give back to General Aviation, knowing what you've been through and that you have that perspective of what can be replaced.
Yes. Yeah, and a week later, I was up with an instructor, with Dave, my instructor, and had an awesome $100 hamburger flight up to Yakima, Washington. And it's made me probably a more cautious pilot. And again, getting the instrument rating and now the commercial, working on the commercial, is going to make me even a better pro pilot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for telling us that. I'd like to bring up your first slide here to talk to people about, again, anyone who wants to resize their screen, you can see it, so you can read it. You can always grab and do that. So let's talk a little bit about, you've been through it, and so what it takes to get through crisis.
Well, and as a psychotherapist for 28 years, I've been helping clients go through all sorts of crises. And so that's why I came up with my big 3, what we'll be talking about tonight. And I do want to preface this by saying that humans are really not made for pandemics. The lower animal part of our brain, our limbic system, it is made for acute stress. A ball comes out in front of you when you're driving, and you know that there might be a kid coming behind it, so you slam on your brakes. So I just want everybody to be aware that this sort of assault to your limbic system is going to cause us to have sort of an increase of that fight, flight, and freeze response. So I just wanted to preface this by saying that this is very unusual. And my big 3, like I said, I've worked on with clients for decades now. But number one is schedule, predictability, and sameness. Humans need pace in their lives. So I suggest that get up on time, go to bed at the same time, dress for the social life you used to have. So get dressed in your real clothes and have that sense of pace in your life. It's really going to help you to stay in the higher part of your brain, the part that we don't share with animals, where we can look at what's in our best interest. So number one is schedule, predictability, and sameness. And make sure that you're moving every day, at least 30 minutes. What I often tell my clients is get sweaty. I don't care how. You know, it can be exercise, walking, swimming. It could be dancing in your living room. But get, sorry. But get sweaty, get moving every day. Your emotional system is very influenced by movement and pace. So it's particularly good to get moving at least 30 minutes a day while keeping your schedule.
That makes sense. And I think that I've certainly noticed myself that anything that you can do that somehow echoes a normal behavior of the past,
yes,
is comforting.
It is. We are creatures of habit. And so I would say that if you're a gentleman that shaves with a razor, that you start with the same side of your face every day. We are creatures of habit. We need pace, we need predictability and rhythm. And so what I kind of have been talking with my clients about is at the beginning of this shelter in place and being isolated, some folks looked at it like a little bit of a summer camp where, oh, I can sleep in, I don't have to go to the office, I can be in my house. But now we are in that messy middle where you need to turn off the TV and have a more realistic schedule, including your lunch times. So let's say that your family did Taco Tuesday. Well, still do Taco Tuesday. It's just you're going to be having either tacos at home that you make, or you're going to be using one of your local restaurants that needs the support of patrons to get food to go.
Right.
So keep that schedule going as much as possible.
Excellent.
Numero uno.
Numero uno. So now numero dos.
Let's talk about numero dos. Well, I love that picture because that's actually me at White Sands, New Mexico.
It is. I didn't know that.
Yes, and so it looks like the Arctic in many ways. And there's a great GA airport there. You have to sort of thread the needle in between the military areas, but it's a beautiful, beautiful part of our country. I can't wait to get back there again. But numero dos is light at the end of the tunnel, that you have a sense of optimism and positivity. So what I'm talking about, you know, the research behind this is decades and decades old. So I'm not recreating something brand new, but we need to look at the positives that have come through the pandemic. Nobody would wish this on anybody, but here we are in reality. So one idea is when you wake up in the morning, before anything gets turned on, any social media or news, just think about what you're grateful for in your life. Can you hear the birds chirping? You know, are the kids out in the living room watching cartoons and you can hear that? Do you have a bed that's supporting you, that's super comfy and awesome? Think about what you're grateful for. It really changes the chemistry of your brain to be looking at what is going well in life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we need to continue to socialize every day. We're doing it differently now, where we're having end of the driveway conversations, or we're using wonderful avenues like Zoom and GoToMeeting and FaceTime and Skype, etc. But look for light at the end of the tunnel. Studies show that if we have predictability, sameness, and schedule, and we can see that things are getting better, even just a little bit, then we can break out of that stress cycle.
Interesting. You know, it strikes me because here we're in New England, we've had kind of a prolonged colder spring, and it just the other day, all of a sudden got a little bit warmer. And I remember stepping outside and looking around, and the daffodils are starting to come through, and things are all of a sudden starting to happen. And what struck me was that I was surprised. What struck me was that concept that I'm looking around and seeing this normalcy and this hope and this what happens at the end of things. And I felt so much better, but I was surprised. We get so stuck in the cycle of news and the cycle of the crisis and everything that's happening. It's hard, I think, for a lot of people, myself included sometimes, to be able to see that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that there's positivity, and that there's a world around us that doesn't know it's happening.
Yes, definitely. One of the things that when you were speaking, what we're talking about here to a great extent is mindfulness. That might sound a little wooey-wooey to some people, but mindfulness and practices of mindfulness, paying attention to what we're grateful for, paying attention to our body, to our schedule, to our predictability, all of those things help fight your critic. And I've said this before, my critic gets up in the morning before I do. My critic goes to sleep after I do. And it tells me all day what I've done that's wrong. Imagine the critic after the airplane crash. Mine was turned up 10 out of 10. You did something, you didn't do something, you know, all this stuff. But mindfulness practice helps us quiet the critic. Think about, you know, a rheostat or a dimmer switch, that if our critic is 8 out of 10, like, you're homeschooling those kids, they aren't listening to you, what kind of a job are you doing? You know, they don't want to put down their game. They don't want to learn about math. What kind of mother are you? What kind of father are you? What we need to be able to do, and we can do with mindfulness, is turn that down.
Right.
So we need our critic to an extent, right? I needed to get here on time, have my materials prepared, but I don't need it arguing with me and telling me everything I did wrong. So this number 2, this light at the end of the tunnel, the positivity, any sort of practices you can do toward that are really going to help.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so number 3.
Yeah, there's my dad in that picture.
That's your dad. See, like, I'm for everybody who's dialing in, I'm learning all these new things about Jolie during the presentation. This is my way of getting information. So
that's right. That's right.
But what kind of, okay, everyone's going to want to know first.
I don't know.
What kind of aircraft is
ask me. But I bet somebody's going to put it in the questions. I'll tell you what. He was in World War II. He was a flight instructor, primary flight instructor. He was in Tulare, California, at Rankin Field, where Sammy Mason, Tex Rankin flew, and my dad flew with him, and some other folks that I know. So that is not the Stearman. I know that.
No, we can already tell that. But I will want to put it out there to everyone.
Yeah.
If anyone who is watching tonight can identify that aircraft, we want to know.
I know it's probably on the back of the photo, but anyway, so yeah, I loaded the presentation with lots of family there with my dad. So number 3 is personal control over your environment. So we need predictability, sameness, and schedule, light at the end of the tunnel, and then I have to be able to control my personal environment. So what that means, again, is that I'm going to pay attention to all of my senses and make sure that I am really being mindful that I'm eating the best food that I can eat. if you drink, drink in moderation. I have a funny story about that with one of my clients. We're doing these virtual cocktail parties now. And she said, I have to admit, I woke up with a big hangover. And I said, what? And she said, well, you know, you're not paying $10 a drink. There's no social stigma about like, oh, you're on your fourth cocktail. So she ended up getting a little buzzed and had a hangover. So don't do that. But make sure that your food is good. You're staying hydrated. Have something that you love to look at, that you love to feel and hear. So make sure all five of those senses, although some research says there's 7 with certain types of touch and movement. So make sure all of those are excellent. They're just A+ in this time. All right, so a little bit, so this isn't a therapy session, but I want you to consider acting the way you would like to feel. So if you're, you know, on the couch watching your millionth episode of the new Tiger thing on Netflix, and you're feeling like a slug, I want you to ask yourself, like, how do I want to feel right now? Your body will meet your lowest expectation of it. So if you're dialed into slug level, your body goes, cool, slug level I'll do. But instead, if you act the way that you want to feel, say you want to feel energetic, you want to feel in control, you want to feel positive, guess what? You have to do the verb. You have to act energetic. You have to act in control. So we're able to sort of trick our bodies a little bit, trick our minds a little bit if we act the way that we want to feel.
Is that basically like a behavioral kind of approach?
Yeah, it just came to me at the beginning of the year when people were talking about, you know, 2020 is going to be such a great year, and you know, it's a great number, and 2020 is clear vision, and I think the universe kind of went, hold my beer, and we got Corona. So yes, it is. It's identifying, you know, how do I want to feel? We're the only animals really that can control our reactions. So we can't control that first thought, but we can control our second thought. Okay, so I'm gonna repeat that. Our first thought, you know, is, Jolie, you did something to cause that accident. You did it, that's it. That's my first thought. And that's usually dictated by that low part of our brain. But us humans get the great capacity to have a second thought, which is like, well, that might be true, but the valve on the #1 cylinder came unseated during a compression stroke, so you went to being, you know, a 3-cylinder airplane instead of 4. So we have that second thought. So you parents that are home, or if you're with your husband or wife and you haven't had quite so much together time in a long time, and you're feeling like, I can't do this, I can't cope, that's your first thought. It's okay to have it. But on second thought, we're going to act the way we want to feel and try to act out of wisdom versus fear. So also want to put a plug in for volunteering and also picking a new goal, something that you want, that you're excited about, that you want to work toward. And then when we get toward the end of our time, I'm not sure how much we have, I do want to give you a little feedback from one of my clients. So,
well, why don't you give me that feedback? I'd love to hear that.
Okay. So my dear client was in ICU with COVID, and she wasn't expected to live. And so it was sort of a horrible, torturous experience for her. She was released from the hospital yesterday, and I got to see her today. And I told her about this seminar. And I said, what advice do you have for people? So she was not on a ventilator, but very close to it, in ICU for about a week. She says, I would have to I would want people to know that this is a world full of love. And people taking care of me showed me that love. She also talked about her daughter, who was able to come to her window because she wasn't expected to live. And the doctors wanted her to be able to talk with her daughter through the window. And the daughter was able to tell her, "I love you, Mom." And she had never been able to really express that. And then thirdly, what she wanted me to tell you was that we all have to have a good sense of humor. And so she, and this is a gal that has COVID-19. She said, "There's some really cool memes that are out." And she goes, "I'd be in my bed and I was having a hard time and somebody would send me a funny meme." So it's maintaining that sense of humor. So she wants to know that there's love all around. Make sure to communicate that to the people that you are near, and also keep up that sense of humor.
That is so inspiring, and coming from someone who absolutely embodies what's happening right now and has made it through it. And
Yes.
wow, hats off to that, and also to you. And I'll tell you, I opened with this, and even though we're not at the total close of the program, I'd like to say it again. We as pilots have such a unique experience that we have this ability to fly and do something that requires skill and focus and training and blocks out so many other things in life while you are doing it and doing it well. And I think I had forgotten that as well, that it didn't take long before I had forgotten that concept that to pre-flight, to get in, to take off, to be a competent pilot requires that separation for whatever is happening in the world around you. And what the reward is that you look down at a landscape below that's so much bigger than you are. And that shows us that life goes on long beyond whatever this crisis is and will last for. It was stunning and it inspired me, and I would love for more and more people to be able to get that perspective, because on the drive home, I'd have to say I was a little bit different.
Yes.
And that's something I think happens a little bit every time we fly, and it happens a lot at a time like this.
Yes, and a lot of insurance companies now have really stepped up as far as knowing when you need to get a little help, and they're waiving authorization requirements and telehealth requirements to some extent, and co-pays and co-insurance. So if anybody out there feels like, their mental health is not trending in a good way, and they're not able to implement some of these tips that I have, please check out getting some counseling from a licensed counselor. I specialize in anxiety, depression, and recovery from trauma. And there are many of us out there that are busier than we've ever been. And I'm happy in a way because we can be providing that service to others. So if you're feeling like you need help, that things are not trending well, contact your local mental health provider or licensed counselor. If folks need to reach me, they're happy to talk to folks as much as I can. And
well, I'd like to make sure everyone knows jolielucas.com. Right?
Yeah.
That's your contact, and follow what you do. There's so much that of content and wonderful giving back and advocacy that we didn't even get to, that's part of the work that you do. And I would just encourage anyone who's part of this program or views the video afterwards, again, jolielucas.com, and please, do that. We're all one big team and one big group in General Aviation. Those of us who are part of the industry itself feel the same way about each other and what we can do to support each other. And it's, I would just say that's what we are here for. We support our community first, and our community helps support the rest of the world and inspire others. And it doesn't matter whether it is someone who is a professional supporting everyone, as Jolie is, or just the person who goes and pulls that pits out of their hangar, goes up and does some loops and rolls that inspires a little kid in their backyard who hasn't seen their friends in weeks, to someday, to put a smile on their face and maybe someday become a pilot. So Jolie, thank you so much for joining us this evening and for your time. I really do appreciate it.
I sure appreciate all that you're doing. And these events are a wonderful way for us to connect. And so thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
You are very welcome. So what I would like to do at this point, we're going to pivot a little bit, and we're actually going to, I'd like to I kind of sort of end on a note that's a little bit fun, that gets us a little bit away from that other side of things that we've all been dealing with. And so I'd like to give everyone a little bit of a sneak peek of what's going on behind me. If you've watched our videos, I will share this really quick. You can see that our Mustang build has been going on for some time now, and the boys and I, Jake and Ben, have been working together on this project that happens here, of course, in the living room of our house here in Massachusetts. And it's pretty fun. I got to tell you, the one thing, if you're going to be locked into a house as part of dealing with the crisis, having an airplane inside the house as a pilot, not a bad way to go. So it has certainly motivated us to step up our game and do a little more work. And I would like to share a little bit of that work directly with you now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shut off my webcam here, and then I'm going to hop over. Jake and Ben have a different camera set up behind me, and we're going to show you a little bit about what is happening there. So hold on 1 minute, and for your questions and answers, we won't be able to see those at the same time as I'm presenting over there. So we'll come back during a quick wrap up to that. Let me stop showing this and turn them on.
Okay, you're good, guys. Okay, everything's working? Cool, so as we transition, so this is the center part of our plane. So we got the front near the window over there, and the tail right where Ben is. And so a really cool part, especially we just like hit on it, a really cool part of this build is to be able to have it in your home, and to be able to walk downstairs, eat breakfast, and say, you know, like, I just made that, let's go build some more. And it's a constant push for us to keep working on the plane.
So let's talk about a little bit about the latest project. So, you know, there's different phases to the build, and I think one of the things that can be frustrating maybe is you make progress, you put a bunch of things together, you then have to take them back apart, and so it looks like it's making a lot of progress, and then all of a sudden it looks like a skeleton again. And so the areas that we've been working on the most right now is this whole belly section of the Mustang. Now, if you're familiar, of course, as just about everybody is, with a P-51 Mustang, it's a water-cooled engine, and all of that cooling happens in that iconic belly scoop. And so you've got this belly scoop, which is actually behind the boys over here where that goes, and it goes into a radiator, and we're going to show you how this all flows. It goes into the belly of the aircraft, the air goes through the radiator and is channeled through what's called a plenum, and ends up coming out through a variable air exit door at the back of the belly of the aircraft. And so why don't you guys do a quick tour of this, and then I'll show how that belly scoop actually works. And then we're going to do something that no one has seen before. We're going to go, at least in our little group, we are going to temporarily clamp on the wrap of this. It's all fiberglass wrapped. We're at that stage. And so for the first time, you'll be able to see how that belly is actually going to look, which is kind of exciting for us as well. So guys, why don't you show everybody through this?
So I think the first thing to touch on is the separation from the main steel frame of the aircraft, which you see in green. And so that's something that comes from Titan, then to the bulkhead, and the whole belly scoop. So something that when we first started the build, is we didn't have that second part of the plane. It was kind of a skinny fuselage, and now building that second part, it's like the whole plane came to life, and now it's like 2 times as big. Under the main steel frame, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 bulkheads. And those sit
And that's
below.
what these vertical
Yeah.
parts here are what's called bulkheads. You have upper bulkheads, which form our cradle deck here, and you have lower bulkheads down here for that belly.
And so we already cut holes through that, and that's gonna allow the air to first come through the radiator, which is right near Ben, and then out the exit door, which we'll show you in a little bit. Also, we have something called a plenum, which lets the air stay in a channel, not get into the rest of the airplane. So it lets the air stay into a channel from the front to the back of the aircraft. And so that's right here. It was a really fun project to figure out how to make all the bulkheads level while also making everything sealed.
Right, so the air is contained by the belly, fiberglass belly of the aircraft at the bottom, and then at the top by this top part of the plenum, which are these flat plates that go from that front with the radiator all the way back to the top here of the air exit door.
Yeah, so then we also have a stringer. So there's one stringer here, one stringer on the other side, and that just adds to the rigidity of the fiberglass belly that we'll show you in a little bit.
So let's talk about the air exit door. If you can actually hand that over, we removed it temporarily. And so this that you see right here, I'll turn it so you can see it a couple ways. This is actually the door that the pilot can control hinging down and up at the exit at the tail of the aircraft. So if I put this in place here, you can get a sense of that. This essentially is how this will look. And we've already had that in place. We have the cable set up. We've already moved it up and down, gotten that in place. This gives you that variable opening at the back. And the original, the classic P-51 Mustang actually got a fair amount of its thrust from that heated air coming out through the air exit door. And so the air exit door controls the exit air, controls the cooling level of the engine. So in the winter, you'd want it more closed. In the summer, you want it more open, and different phases of flight, et cetera. But that all happens here. We need to keep that out of the way for being able to actually mount and clamp on here the fiberglass. So you guys ready to see what this looks like with fiberglass on?
Yeah, let's go do it.
All right. Now, one of the things that's actually really fascinating about this build and aircraft construction in general is so many of the components, whether it be the aluminum or whether it be fiberglass, are incredibly flexible and seem like they do not have strength in them when they're loose parts before you assemble them. The floor, remember, of the cockpit when we actually did that. That was something that you could wave that around and go, how is anyone ever going to be able to step on this? Yet a few rivets later and some stiffeners, and it is rock solid.
Yeah.
And the same is true of this. This is incredibly loose and very thin. But when it gets attached, so let's bring this up into place. A little more on my side room. There we go. And there we go. And so what you can actually see here now, and I'll actually go over to the camera and do a little more, do a little zoom in. But what you can actually see is the entire structure that's underneath this that will be riveted on. And when all of these pieces are riveted, and this is permanently in place, this is going to become one tough structure. And you actually won't be able to really tell much about the material difference between the fiberglass that's here, the side skin that's aluminum, and the rest of the aircraft here.
Yeah.
So let's do a quick pan over here just to show everybody a little close up of that. And then I'm gonna hop back off to do our wrap up here. But again, Jake, Ben, thank you guys so much. You know, this plane would never, ever get built if it weren't for the help of both these guys. And it's been a good learning experience for you guys.
Oh yeah, it's been really cool to, I think the biggest thing is like the problem solving. So being able to figure out, you know, how do we get this rivet in there? Or how do we redesign, you know, a little part of the airplane to make it better fit maintenance or better fit other things. And so it's been really cool to kind of be on that part of the build as well.
Excellent. So I will leave you guys here, head back to that part of our little studio for SocialFlight Live, and be right back. But thanks, guys. All right, guys. So again, thanks to Jake and Ben so much for that. It's I got to tell you, it's been my life's dream to be able to, of course, do this project with my boys, and so very kind of exciting and fun thing to do. If you'd like to follow our build, all you have to do is go on to SocialFlight's YouTube channel again, just youtube.com/c/SocialFlight, or just search for SocialFlight. And of course, thank you so much for joining us at SocialFlight Live. We do this every Tuesday at 8 p.m. and it wouldn't be what it is if it weren't for you. So send us notes and send us information about what you would like to see, other things that we can help you. We'll continue doing other surveys, and send us your stories, especially stories about supporting local airports, FBOs, and businesses. If you are considering doing anything to your aircraft, it is a good time to start making that plan now, to actually purchase the supplies that you're going to need for your annual inspection, or think about booking that upgrade. It's, you know, life will go on, and it's important to support our industry and make sure that all these companies are there for us at the end, that we're there beforehand as well. So again, for SocialFlight Live, follow us, check out the app at socialflight.com, and thank you so much. We will see you next week at 8 p.m. Until then, blue skies.